It's my pleasure now to introduce Avi Samuels. Avi is the global chairman of Shalva. Growing up with the Shalva Dream and Vision, Avi was involved in the development of the Shalva organization since his youth. It's a family endeavor, a family passion and mission. Following Avi's military service, his rabbinic studies and business school, Avi joined Shalva's administration in 2004 with the primary focus of advancing Shalva's strategic development in Israel and around the world. Avi has successfully increased and diversified the organization's sources of support to include significant donors and resources in Israel and around the globe. Avi is responsible for progressing Shalva's presence in Israel as well, creating networks of support and opportunities for program development, in addition to maintaining a stable and healthy organization-wide financial model. As they say, Imin Kemach in Torah. So in order for this to happen, there needs to be support, and Avi helps garner that and find other avenues and introduce Shalva to potential supporters around the world. So Avi, Boker Tov for us here, Tzarayim Tovim for you out there in Eretz Israel. Thank you so much for taking of your busy schedule to join us and to share with us a little bit about Shalva. Today is the last day of January. February here in America is Jewish Disabilities Awareness Month. And so we're getting a head start. We thank Shalva for providing us this opportunity. And we look forward to your words now, after which we'll open it up for some conversation between myself and Avi, as well as some any comments from those on the call on the Zoom can put it in the chat box, and we can address those questions as well to Avi. Thank you again.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, everybody, for joining. It's wonderful being on this call with you. I actually had a previous call a few minutes on Thursday with you, Rabbi, and it was quite fascinating that you are Yosef. The story behind Shalva is my brother Yosef, Yossi, and your daughter is Shoshana Weinstock, and the teacher who actually made the breakthrough with Yossi to communication at the age of 8 is Shoshana Weinstock. And that's, that brings it home to us. So it's even more special to be here with you and your community. As mentioned, Shalva is a family story. My brother Yossi, my older brother, he's 44, I'm 41, was injured at the age of 11 months old here in Israel in 1977 by a faulty vaccine. And my parents' life were flipped, and they were trying to survive and to provide Yossi with what he needs as a child, with his medical needs, and just seeing that he's taken care of and he has a life, and of course to take care of the rest of their young family. I wasn't around back then. This is in 1977. After a period of a year struggling in Israel, my parents made a decision to go to New York. And in New York, my mother made this promise in her heart that if ever they will have the answer to Yossi's needs, she will dedicate her life helping other families who are dealing with similar situations, raising a kid with disability and all the challenges that come with it. In 1983, I was born in 79 in New York. In 83, my parents decided they had enough and made their way back to Israel. And in the deaf school in Jerusalem, a teacher who's deaf herself, as mentioned before, Shoshana Weinstock, managed to fingerspell the word shulchan, table, in the palm of Yossi's hand, and with the word shulchan, very much the story of Helen Keller, to teach him the 22 letters of Aleph Bet and to open him up to the world, to teach him to communicate. This is a Shin, this is a Vav, Lamet, Chet, Nun. Someone invented some 60, 70 years ago based on English Sign Language. Hebrew Sign Language, an A became an Aleph, B became a Bet, G is Gimel, and so on. And Yossi, with the word Shulchan, literally climbing into his mouth and uh, teaching him the connection between the object and the name, she managed to make this breakthrough to communication, and this unbelievable miracle happened. And of course, my mother felt it's payback time. She knew exactly what she wanted to do. Started pushing in the direction of starting Shalva. And in 1990, my father, with help of family, help of friends in Vancouver, my father is a Vancouver boy, born and raised secular, came to Israel when he was 18 with a pack on his back. On his way to Europe, his mother made him make a stop to Israel. And he came in the summer of 1970, supposed to spend 2 weeks here with distant relatives in Tel Aviv and just, to see where he comes from. And something happened to him here, and he never left, became religious, met my mother, and a few years later, and started to raise their family here in Israel. When my father was in Vancouver visiting his parents, he shared this dream of his wife with friends of the family, and they helped start Shalva. Shalva started very much as a little mom and pops. My mother, she knew what she wanted. She knew what the main need is, and she knew that the relief that she could give the family, just to have the child out of the home in the critical hours of after school, afternoon, will enable the family to just function as a normal and healthy family, and the kid will have what he needs, the therapy, the love and care to develop to the best of his abilities. And then we bus the kids home in the evening after supper at 6 o'clock. So from the morning when he left to school till 7 o'clock, close to 7 in the evening, mother had her day, father had his day, siblings had their day, and the kid, of course, is happy, developing, and had his full day. With that simple solution, she started Shalva. The first year of Shalva, she used to pick up the kids from their homes with a little secondhand car, minivan that she bought. I was 12 years old, and a young volunteer used to come home from school every afternoon and be her escort on the bus, play the guitar for the kids, be with them, feed them, take care of them. And this was Shalva with the first 6 kids, 2 professionals, and us as volunteers, and a few kids from the neighborhood. Very quickly, Shalva developed, and many kids started coming our way. We made, of course, my parents made the connection with the schools. My father was full-time in the computer field, and he took his breaks to help his wife with her dream, with her little mom and pops. Shalva grew with more and more programs serving the same purpose. Their overnight respite program to give the families one night a week that the kid is not home at night. That not only gave the night off, it also created the window of 36 hours, because the next day the kid went to school from Shalva and back to Shalva with his school bus. So only tomorrow evening he's bused home, meaning that that family had a window of 36 hours to just be like every other family. And the kid had 2 days that, at Shalva, at school, coming back to Shalva, the overnight program where he has, where the staff has the opportunity to work with him on independence, on showering, brushing his teeth, preparing the bed, every kid on his level, and developing his independence and life skills. And other programs, overnight and weekend programs that, every fourth Shabbat, a kid had a Shabbat at Shalva, and so on and so forth. Programs develop, and with one focus on all programs, to give the kid everything he needs to develop his potential, his full potential, and at the same time to give the family the shoulder they need to lean on and to be able to function and have a normal life as much as possible. Many programs developed over the years, and programs started operating at Shalva from birth through adult to 24/7. I'm going to fast forward to where we are today, 31 years later. Shalva operates in, I'm sorry the video didn't work, but I do urge you all to please, we will send you the link, and please take a few minutes to watch it so you could see and understand better what Shalva is about. Really, in 4 minutes, you'll get an amazing picture of what we do. But Shalva today sits.
I think if you'd like, I think I can play the video now. I have it on my wired internet. Would you like to see
I think it's better now, Rabbi, already if we send it. Whatever
Okay,
you
that's fine.
decide, but whatever you decide.
Maybe at the end we can do it. That's fine.
Okay, whatever you. It's your decision. I'm your guest. Um, Generally, Shalva services today thousands of kids in the center in Jerusalem. That is our main center. That is the largest, most advanced center that we know of in the world. And it's amazing to see a mother's dream that started with only wanting to help a few kids and to be there for them and to make sure that they could have what she didn't have as a mother raising her child, and to see where it is today, uh, serving thousands of children, family members in cutting edge programs, and being really a model to Israel and to the world in disability care, but equally important in rights that people with disabilities have to be integrated and to be included as part of society. Everything we do today has to do, if it's our center that is like a community center open for the public with the most beautiful facilities to bring in the public, if it's a 350 seat auditorium, if it's that hosts, of course, pre-COVID, and hopefully soon we'll get back to that, hosting. In 2019, we hosted here at Shalva almost nearly 200,000 people that are from Israel and from the world visiting, coming for whatever, for a conference, for a show, for a visit, for a tour. Over 500 people a day were eating at our cafe here, where some of the waiters are with individuals with disabilities, having an amazing experience here. Hundreds of kids playing in the parks on a daily basis with and without disabilities, most beautiful parks that are fully accessible for kids with disabilities. And everything we do really is to try to make our world a better place, not only to care for these kids, to give them the best therapies, the best opportunities, and to be there for them, for their parents, for their siblings, for their entire family, but also to try really to have an impact and to make a difference in our world, and to make sure that our world becomes a better place for kids with disabilities. If I go back to my personal story, only 30 years ago, growing up with Yossi, the world was very different. It was very different being with a brother that has special needs. We felt that me and my siblings that were judged. We were, Yossi doesn't really belong, and we were like trying to protect him from the world, and always with a battle in our mind of, hey, don't look at him like that. You don't know him. He just communicates differently. But once you really get to see him, to understand who he is, you'll just see the beautiful person he is, with a great sense of humor. And of course, he has an opinion about everything, and he's the most amazing, amazing person. And it's really what we try to do here at Shalva, to treat people as people, to see their talent, to see their abilities. We always talk here about thinking abilities and seeing possibilities. We don't see the disability. Yes, of course, the disability is there, but when we focus on abilities, we could see so many possibilities, and every child has his potential. Some are lower functioning and could do only so much, and some, of course, are higher functioning and are able of really integrating and being part of society, having a job and contributing to society as a contributing member of society. So this is really what Shalva is all about. And I would love to give it over to you, Rabbi, maybe now, and not go on and on, but perhaps if you have more
I
specific
could
questions.
listen longer, but I appreciate the introduction. First of all, the book your father wrote, Dreams Never Dreamed, is is a powerful book. I encourage all of our those listening on the Zoom as well as on Facebook to consider purchasing it with proceeds going to Shalva. It's an amazing story. One thing that I wanted to ask you is that, as I mentioned to you in our pre-conversation, I worked with special needs families as I was in my internship, as I was studying for my master's in social work. And one of the things that I saw was the vast difference that a child with special needs within the family, the impact on that family. Sometimes it's devastating and unfortunately really threatens the very foundation of that family. And at other times, it is able to bring out the best in that family and make the relationship stronger and positive things come out of it. Obviously, the Samuels family fits into that second category. And I was just wondering if there's anything you, in thinking about your experience in that family, whether it's the support or lack thereof, or the dynamic within the family, and obviously Shalva's dealt with thousands of families since then. What are some of the keys that lead to strength and success as opposed to more negative, unfortunate outcomes when there's this challenge that's presented to a family?
I think you said it very correctly that people take it in different directions. But what we do know is that many families, of course, there is always the sense of blame and why me and why us, and of course, children are more embarrassed, and children have many issues socially, overcoming and understanding, how to cope with it and how to not to fall with this situation and to feel different and to be isolated, to isolate themselves or to find to be in places that actually bring them to these feelings. We here at Shalva have many, of course, support groups for parents, for siblings, brothers, sisters, grandparents, all around this subject. But it's very much what the community, and it's so important to be a supportive community, because at the end of the day, if this child is part of the community, if siblings feel, what gave me the best feeling growing up is that in our little shul, in Har Nov, the neighborhood I grew up in Jerusalem, it was a very young neighborhood, and we just moved back in '83. My parents rented a place. Har Nov wasn't yet existing then, but 2 years later we moved to this neighborhood, and it did all the difference in the world that Yossi was a superstar in shul. Kids loved him, and he found his niche, and he was there giving out candies, and kids, we found a role for him, and kids came and learned how to communicate with him, and he was an attraction. And the fact that we felt comfortable bringing him to shul, in the street, it wasn't always like that. Kids were staring, and we were always like shy and kind of protecting him, as I said before. But when we had the community around us, supportive and loving him and seeing, just accepting him the way he is, this makes all the difference and really enables the family to cope and to move on. What happens is that there is kind of a bubble that develops around the family, and to protect the child, to protect themselves, and not to be a burden on the community, not to be a burden on their other family members, on on their surroundings. You don't want to be that burden. Oh, I'm now being supported. So being needing the support. So I think the community plays a huge role here, and I will mention that today we live in a much better world. We are much more sensitive. We raise our kids with a much, greater sensitivity. And of course, there is always still long ways to go, but we do live in a much better generation. We talk a lot about the negative part of technology and of how our kids grow up, and but there are wonderful things in our kids' generation that we didn't have in our generation and generation before. So it's a lot of. We always say these families didn't choose to have a kid like this. No one chooses it, and the burden, the achrayut, should not be on them. It should be on us, on the community. And once we share that sense of partnership with the family, and it's in little things. It's just opening the doors, making sure that the kid is welcomed, and believe me, and it. If everybody who actually has has his doors open for these kids and makes them feel at home, you know how much they really contribute and how much we gain from it. Our children gain from it, we gain from it, and our community, our society becomes so much more shalem and so much more beautiful with these kids part of it in a real way.
Absolutely. Um, reading your father's book and his journey, besides for the Shalva piece, is a fascinating journey, one that's unique. But I must say that reading your father's book makes me want to know a little more about your mother, who seems to be who seems to be an incredibly powerful, driven individual. So maybe if you could tell us a little bit about her role as it's been, and her passion and where that came from.
My father calls himself Forrest Gump because my mother has this vision and he runs, not always in the right direction, but uh, she's the brains of the outfit. She's the fighter, and it comes across in the book. And believe me, it's much more powerful in real life than in the book. She's a humble person. Most people don't know her. She's shy. She doesn't like the spotlight. She never wants people to thank her or to say, "Hey, good job." And it's just she's a driven person. She's on a mission, and Shalva is her vision, her dream, and her passion, her drive. She always talks about the fact that believing makes miracles happen, and she always mentions the story of Batya, the daughter of Paro, who put her hand out to grab Moshe from the waters, and Rashi brings the uh, the pirush that says that Vatishlachet Amata, she sent her arm. Amma has the meaning of a servant, a help, a maid, and it also has the meaning of arm. And the medrash that says that her arm got long. And she says, there is a message here. The Torah is not telling us, it's not a fairy tale, that, hey, her arm got long. And the message obviously is that when you reach out, you make the effort and you reach out, you will, chances are that you will get much farther than what you could dream and anticipate and plan. So this is really the story of Shalva, reaching out, trying to make really the effort at every given moment, and working hard to fulfill every dream and to believe in our mission, and the miracles happen, and she keeps us on the right track. She's the drive behind us, uh, and not afraid to do the right thing, and to uh, and not to do the wrong thing. Many times we think we'll do this, we'll do that, but she's our barometer, telling us, this is within our mission and this is not. So she's an incredible person, and as we call it, a tzadika nisteret. She wants to do her thing. She says another interesting. Uh, she always says, you know, when the brothers came to Yosef, they and they figured out what's going on, and they were in the room. They said, "Aval Hashemim anachnu," but we are guilty. And she says she that you should read it, "Aval Hashemim anachnu." If you have that but in life, you're guilty. Every time something comes our way, we have that but. Yeah, I would love to do it, but I'm short now. I can't. I don't have time. But it's always there. And you have to try to live your life without that but, because when, yeah, so things won't happen, and you're kind of guilty of it. So that's how she lives her life, and that's how Shalva became to be what it is.
Wow. Great. I love the idea of believing brings about miracles. It seems like something from this past parsha also, of the splitting of the sea. First they believe, and all of a sudden the miracles come about. It's an
But
incredible idea.
you have to make the first step. You have to reach out, like
Nachshon,
Nachshon in this parsha as well. You can't
exactly.
just sit and believe.
Can't just sit and believe. I don't mean,
Actually, my father quotes, if I may,
sure.
the other side of it. He says, when it comes to chesed, when it comes to helping someone, don't be a believer. Be a koifer. Say no. Don't say God will help. You help,
There you go.
as if there is no God. Do your thing.
Right.
Don't be a believer there.
I hear you. I can imagine that when he talks about some of the early trips that he made, and how he's working full time and he's schlepping around the world in order to bring about this mission. You know, he didn't want people to believe in it. He wanted people to partner and get it done. I don't mean to monopolize the conversation. If there's any questions that anyone wants to add in the chat, please feel free to do so. We'll check that out. I wanted to ask Avi, being that now your role is a global on a global level, anything that you think about in terms of the attitudes that there are towards special needs in Israel versus America, and you know, some of the things that are going on now. You mentioned that in the past, certainly over time, attitudes and sensitivity and inclusion has developed in a positive direction. Currently, where does Israel fit in terms of the global efforts at inclusion? And maybe a comment or two if you have anything about the United States.
I think Israel plays an incredible role in uh, in many fields. You know, Israel, of course, innovation in different fields, as we all know. But in the field of disability care, special needs, Israel is very advanced. We're lucky to have amazing government support, which we didn't have 20 years ago. The government of Israel now is the biggest partner in and believer in developing the services, and to see how to make the world better for people with disabilities, persons with disabilities. We have a lot still to catch up. We have a lot to learn. In some areas, it's much more advanced in the US, for example, in independent living and housing for adults with disabilities. We, you know, we have ways to go here in Israel, and Shalva is actually leading that way on many levels. But you know, it's easy to talk about what's not there, and of course, in many areas there is still a long ways to go. But the change we're seeing in Israel and in the world is quite incredible. If it has to do with laws and regulation, if it has to do with accessibility, that is mandatory in the US and in Israel, in Western countries, of public places, of you know, parks, of it's really, you know, an amazing a place to be in. And yes, we still have a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn in many areas, but at the same time, we're very much in the game and leading in quite a few areas as well, especially in technological areas that come to use for special needs accessibility. And we have quite a few quite a few developments in Israel recently that have to do with bettering the life quality of people with disability. And I think, again, it's a combination of being more sensitive, having uh, more sensitivity, raising our kids in a different way, and at the same time having the support of governments. We have here at Shalva in what's called inclusion. We integrate in our daycare centers and kindergartens classes for typical kids. We have here the reverse inclusion, but what happens around the world, of course, as we all know, typical schools integrate kids with disabilities, some more successfully, some less successfully. But just the idea that schools naturally today are opened and have programs and have classes and have activities for kids with disabilities is huge. And we're definitely going in an amazing direction. I see kids coming to volunteer at Shalva from the US. We have gap year students that are in Israel, and in a regular year we have, I think, about 1,500, 2,000 maybe, I'm not sure exact numbers, but they all come and volunteer and become part of, and they want to do it, and it contributes to them so much, and of course they go back home, and it's part of their life, and back in their community they're more sensitive and have better understanding and opened uh, to include in their life kids and youngsters and people, adults with disabilities. I do want to mention, that here in Shalva, just briefly, we faced a lot of opposition trying to build this center. And we had about 100 neighbors opposing the center, taking us to court. And that is really when I got involved in a bigger way. It wasn't exactly my role to be involved in Shalva. I had some, always supportive, always part of it, but my father had a hard time dealing with it, and he had a heart condition, as you could read in the book. And my mother was suffering a lot. It wasn't for them, and I found myself leading the chart and being in court uh, and observing what's going on, and looking at these neighbors, and I understood that they're not evil, they're not bad. It's just ignorance, and when people are ignorant, they have fears, and they were fearing having a place like this next to their homes, and what would the result be? How will it look for their kids walking in the street, and the fears of maybe having that danger of oy vavoy, bumping into a kid with special needs. And it was a 3-year battle. My biggest joy today is to see these neighbors and their children here at Shalva enjoying the center, volunteering, enjoying the parks, and understanding that, hey, life is so much more beautiful with these kids around you. So that is really, very much what we're doing today, over and above, caring for thousands of children and supporting their families, is to try to show that, hey, life is so much more perfect and shalem with these kids integrated and part of life, part of society.
And inclusion is a win-win.
100% win-win, and the win on our end is much greater. Of course, we contribute a lot to them, but we all see, and everybody sees it, and that no one. It's like everybody, lelo yotze min haklal, will tell you that once they're involved and once they include and once they take so much more from this.
There was a couple of questions about being that Shalva was at the forefront of these efforts of inclusion. Do you collaborate? Do you partner? Do you share your best practices with others? I remember something in the book about a role that you have as a consultant for some worldwide efforts. Maybe it was the UN. I forget exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you collaborate with other providers of these services locally and abroad?
So generally, Shalva always collaborated and always shared knowledge. And I won't go into examples, but over the years, with many communities, countries around the world, now that Shalva is a model of a center of excellence, a model in Israel, uh, it's Ki Mitzion Tetzeh Torah, and Israel is leading in many areas uh, in our field. Shalva became to be at the forefront of it. And it's interesting that this period of COVID forced us. We were going more digital and helping, other, of course, families, parents in Israel and around the world digitally. But of course, uh, everything we used to do academically in terms of research and development, we actually went online, and now we established what we call the Shalva Institute, that shares more structured knowledge, experience, and what we gained in the 31 years of our operation. It's soon going, we're finishing up, the website that will collaborate all of this. But we are here supporting many, many communities around the world. As a matter of fact, as part of the Abraham Accord, I'm in touch, we're in touch, but I have the privilege of leading it in many ways with countries in our region, and the Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and others, to try to help them develop services and programs, and quite fascinating things are developing. So we're here, yeah, and we have many partnerships with different bodies in our field, both practically, both and academically. And yeah, we're here to share, and whatever we know, whatever we learned, and to learn from others. By the way, we don't know the whole Torah, but of course, to collaborate and together, make our world a better place on all levels.
As a follow-up to that, there was a question about the continuation of inclusion as children grow up into adults, and the opportunities for, you mentioned that independent living was a challenge, but in the workforce, and somebody mentioned, especially in Israel, national service or the IDF. Can you maybe speak about how that develops after children grow up, and how inclusion continues in their adult life?
I'll tell you a little story here. We operate, one of our greatest missions now is adults. We realized that bringing the kid up from birth till stage of adulthood, if you don't then make sure that he has the proper solution as an adult, in terms of course, living with the right quality of life, but at the same time having a job and being part of society, you're not really fulfilling your mission. So we always knew that we want to be there. It took us many years, and the last few years we're really leading the chart. And what we see, we have many businesses turning to us, and they actually want people with disabilities to work in their businesses, but there are many barriers that we're solving up front and as we communicate with these different areas of business. And it's amazing to see how much progress we're doing. The story I wanted to share is that we had here a conference of a big known business in Israel, and the CEO of that company uh, shared with his people in the room very naturally. It was like 50 or 60 of his managers around the country. He shared with them that, hey, inclusion is very important as a value. And of course, we all want to raise our kids with that great value. But uh, but for me, in a practical level, if you integrate a person with disabilities in a workplace and he's contributing, And there are different areas that, of course, they could contribute more than us. So he's a contributing member of society, and then he's really integrated. And I listen to his words, and for me, it meant everything. I see my brother Yossi. Yossi is blind, deaf, in his wheelchair. All he has is the palm of his hand. But with that, he lives a full life. And the thing, and believe me, he lives a full life. He loves life. He gets up every day and he swallows the day with the busiest guy. You'll never have a moment to sit with him, always running, always busy. And the thing he will share with you, the first thing he will share with everybody who meets him is that, hey, I work at Derech Eretz. Derech Eretz is the company that owns Route 6 highway in Israel. And for him, it's such a source of pride that, hey, I'm normal. I work, I have a job. That it takes first place in everything he wants to share. Always, this will be the first thing. And I saw it even more so when he came to my house for Shabbos after he got the job. And he rotates every Shabbos. He goes to a different brother. He's the most loved uncle, always has a sweet in his pocket for, I told you in shul, he used to give out candy. So that's stuck, so he always has that candy for the kids and they love him. And I was helping him getting into his pajamas at night, and I saw him struggling, and I realized he's trying to take off this fancy title he got, like in high tech in Israel. He got it, in this little thing you put on your belt with your picture and title and a little plastic. So he was working hard to take it off his pants and then to stick it onto his pajamas. And for me, it just really showed how deep it is for him and how important it is for his dignity that he has a job. So we focus a lot here on employment training, and we have here at Shalva about 100 youngsters every day working. We have a little factory here doing different things, selling it in our workshop. We try to go online now, not very successfully, but hopefully we'll get there. We have a little gift shop at Shalva, but we do stuff for companies in Israel, and they order and they produce for them in many different stuff, ceramics, wood, glass, different areas. And as I mentioned before, they work in our coffee shop and places, but most importantly, we integrate hundreds of adults with disabilities into society, into normal businesses from all sorts. And we support them and we're there with them. The biggest fear of an employee is when I employ someone of an employer, sorry, is that when I employ someone with special needs, what will happen if I have to fire him? And how can I, so to begin with, they don't want to get into that. It's like, I don't want to be in that position. So we tackle all of those challenges. And for example, here we always tell them, you're not hiring a specific person, you're hiring a Shalva member. And if this doesn't work out, we'll send you someone else and we'll place him in a place that fits him. So we take away the fears. As I mentioned before, fears is the biggest thing.
Great. While I set up the last video from the Shalva band, maybe you could share with us what's next after COVID for Shalva, for inclusion, maybe the immediate future, and then beyond. As you're involved in strategy, so it'd be nice to hear a little bit about some of your thoughts, and then maybe introduce. We all know the Shalva band, but of course, if you could give us a little bit of a background on that. I would just make one last plug for your father's book, Dreams Never Dreamed, which goes into a lot of detail about the Shalva band, also goes into a lot of detail about the love and care that your family, especially your mother, put into the actual campus of Shalva, and the incredible story of how Shalva took place.
What's next is a big question. When you would ask me a year ago, what's next? We thought we have it figured out for 5 years to come as a 5-year plan. Of course, we're in a different place today. But still, We believe that next will be developing the digital area. Uh, this period taught us a lot, all of us, and we learned how much Shalva could be influential and to support so many more people outside of our walls. And the world is ready for it today. So that is an area, very large, big area that we're developing, and we believe it will take a serious part of our development. And of course, thinking of Shalva models around across Israel, it's a lot of talk with the government. As you know, the government of Israel now for 2 years is not exactly a government, so we're waiting for that to stabilize. And we really believe, we hope and believe that that in the future, in the near future, the world will become a better place and more and more, for these kids and for their families. And we believe it's a joint effort, and we're all partners in it. So this opportunity for me is wonderful. I invite you all to come visit Shalva, hopefully soon. Here in Israel, we're safe. We're all vaccinated already. um, but actually, I'll share with you, we started a pilot today with the government at Shalva. Israel is going to a very interesting place. There will be three ways to get into every place in Israel, public place. Soon, even restaurants and theaters, and you'll have to show a certificate that you were vaccinated, a certificate that you had COVID and you're after, or take a rapid COVID test, PCR test, rapid COVID test that just came to Israel now. And Shalva is part of the pilot together with the government and a few hospitals. And today we started this pilot at Shalva, that everybody walking into Shalva that that's not vaccinated and doesn't have what's called a Tudat Mitchasen, that he had COVID, makes a test, and in 1.5 minutes, you know if he's positive or not. And it's amazing because Shalva now will become what we call a green island, and will be able to bring back programs and services in full. So hopefully soon you'll all be able to be here and visit and enjoy Shalva from close. And going to the next video of the Shalva band, it's exactly what we believe in. They grew out of Shalva, and these are youngsters that they just had the stage, and they proved to the world that when you believe in abilities and not in disabilities, you could get so far. And the impact the Shalva band still has on the world is so great and so amazing. And we're privileged that this group grew out of Shalva and brings such a beautiful thing to the world, shared such a beautiful thing with the whole world.